Bad Boys Ride or Die is directed by Adil and Below. I'm sorry if I get their names right. It stars Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, and among others. And this story is the fourth film in the Bad Boys franchise, in which Marcus and Mike have to essentially clear Captain Howard's name after the events that go down in the last movie. And if you see them from the trailer, pretty much they get into some shenanigans where they're pretty much on the run as fugitives and stuff. And it's also becomes a lot more kind of a personal story that's involved more with Mike, and also some dealing with some certain things that involve with Marcus this time, especially after he comes across as having basically like a near-death experience. And I'll leave it there. Now, here's a little backstory. Now, what can I say? I've grew up with the first two Bad Boys movies, especially, when I was a kid, getting into Michael Bay's crazy wildness when it came to his directorial debut with 1995's The First Bad Boys. And even to this day, watching 1 and 2, the movies are just so fun, and they're really high-octane action and entertainment. And the chemistry that's great with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith is so captivating. And even this day, I can't get enough of it. Like, these are the kind of movies I go to every time when I try to look for good like buddy cop type of movies like this, or Lethal Weapon and other stuff, or if I just want like pure comedy like these kind of movies. And then when the third movie came out a few years ago, that was actually one that I was really excited with, and kind of am glad it was going back into full force, especially having a welcome return with Martin Lawrence come back after a long time, since he hasn't really been appearing in movies in a while. And that was definitely a big surprise. And for a movie that came out in January, it really felt like a summer film that should have been released later. And it was one of those kind of movies that, it knew what it was trying to do with trying to set up this new type of story involving with Will Smith's character. Because for a while, the first two films was always more about Martin Lawrence, because, he had taught Bill and everything, and Will Smith was co-lead. I'm glad that at least with the current movies that we finally get to see some more stuff that was involved with Mike, and the way that he was still able to continue the story and still respecting the character's legacy that Michael Bay had left behind with the first two films. It still shows that the chemistry is still there, and the story can still really work, even though I still miss what Bay directing these movies. But these directors that came on board with the last film, they come back with this one, and the third film really proved that these directors know what they're doing when it comes to giving, badass like we want in these kind of movies, and keeping the comedy up. And with this one, it got me really curious, but I was still on kind of the, down low, not really too excited, because I was still interested, but, I wanted to still go in with just open-minded, because, things like this can always happen, especially if it's a fourth film in a franchise. You never know these days, but there's actually been a lot of fourth films and series that I still really get a kick out of, especially with buddy cop movies, like with Lethal Weapon. And so going into this one, my expectations were still open, but I was still really excited and still open with it. And after upon seeing it, man, I had a blast with this movie. This is everything that I really loved with the last movie. There's some stuff that I still prefer in the third movie over this one in certain regards, but I kind of put these on like kind of the same level in that regard. And so, to get into my pros, I will say that the cast in this are all fantastic. Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, what can I say? They still hold their chemistry really great. I laugh my ass off every single time these two get in their camaraderie together, and a lot of the crazy shit they get into, especially with the stuff that involves where Marcus is getting into a lot more spiritual kind of stuff. And not going to go into spoilers, but the kind of near-death experience that he has in the film, it really plays into key with with the way that it also deals with Will Smith's character. And there's also some stuff that I really appreciate that the movie touches bases on with both of them, because they get to really expand on some stuff, especially now that Will Smith in this movie, his character in this one gets married, and he ends up finally settling down and trying to be the more wiser of the two and everything. And it just shows that the characters are still evolving as they go. And there's also some really deep stuff that I found myself really, getting into, especially how it raised the stakes. And I'm not going to go into detail or anything, but it just shows a lot more of the stuff that that has to do with Will Smith's character's past in the previous movies. And the way it comes into gear, I thought was really great, and it really put things into perspective, especially with its climax. And then the rest of the cast are always great too. Seeing the new team members that came back in the last three in number 3 with Vanessa Hudgens and the other guy, they get to shine in this one too in their regard. And then the other biggest standout, especially with Armando, the character that was in the last film, he really gets to shine too in a lot of action scenes in his own regard, and he tags along as you see in the trailers and stuff. And man, this guy really knows how to fight in a lot of this. And this character, I I was having a blast with in the third film, the way he was doing a lot of his fight scenes and stuff. And here, he really gets to shine a lot with, this prison sequence that takes place. And then later on, when he really gets to go in this, especially in this prison sequence that takes place and all that. So he was fun. And then the other biggest standout, surprisingly enough, was actually Reggie. Now, going back to Bad Boys 2, that scene where he first meets Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, it's not only still cracks me to this day, but it just shows that we've come a long way from seeing him, the kid that was going to pick up Megan to go on a date, to being pretty much a badass in his own right in this movie. Like, there's a whole sequence he goes through that was not only so, like, fun to watch, but it just shows that, man, never underestimate the guy like this, especially how his character is, served in the Army or the Marines or whatever. Like, he was definitely the MVP of the movie. And then the brutality, the action, everything is so choreographed and well executed the way it plays out with the way the directors are shooting it and stuff. And even taking some cues from Michael Bay as well with doing the whole side sweep and all that. And, some shots that you see like you see in the other Bad Boys films. So it's all Top Gear in its own regard. And then there's actually some really cool camera work with some parts where you see it like in first person and all that. I thought that was badass. And I saw the behind the scenes stuff, the way they accomplished it. And they basically had to put the cameras on these kind of like packs that they're walking around with and shooting and stuff. And I just really like how he was able to really play it out with that scene. And then it does have some really fun callbacks too that actually play out as well with the story, because there's actually some stuff that they actually touch base on with Bad Boys 2 that comes into gear with a plot point that takes place that I won't spoil, but it really shines some light on some stuff that I thought was really great, how they are still giving some really expanding on the world and everything. And then the villain, I thought, was a really good choice, interesting take on. I thought that the guy that played him was really good, and I really like how the stakes get really more high up, where not only are Marcus and Mike on the run being fugitives, but the fact that it also turns into pretty much Grand Theft Auto world, where you got bounty hunters going after them, all kinds of stuff. It just shows that this villain ain't fucking around, and I really appreciate that they really try to keep it going with the momentum. Very similar to the last movie, but shit gets very personal as it goes along, and I really appreciate that. How it really puts our two leads into gear with, not stopping what they had to accomplish. And then this, hearing the familiar theme song is great too, and a lot of the musical cues that we hear from the other films was great. And then, the movie just also really keeps into gear the movie just keeps it going with a lot of nonstop comedy that I couldn't, like, seeing it in a crowded theater is just such a very blast of being able to hear the people's reactions and stuff. But even the little cameos we gave on some of the people that come back in this, I thought was really fun too, that I won't spoil. And then if I had to get into any kind of cons, we'll have to say that they do introduce another character in this that's the daughter of Captain Howard, and I felt like there was more they really could have done with her, because it seems like the plot point with her is supposed to lead to something big, but it doesn't really. I mean, it has a good payoff, but it really feels like she's very kind of underused, if that makes sense. And I feel like it's really kind of a waste of a good actress like that, because she was really great in Better Call Saul, and I just kind of wish they could have done more with her. And then, and it's also kind of a missed opportunity of not being able to bring the wife back from the other three films, because Teresa Randall really did a great job with the other films, and I just wish that they could have got her in this one. But the woman that replaced her was fine, but I just wish that we could have seen her on screen again with Martin Lawrence, because their chemistry was just so, like, lightning in a bottle. But other than that, though, I mean, that was just my kind of little minor cons I do have to say, because I still had a blast this movie, and it might go down as at least one of my honorable mentions for the year. And with that, I'm going to give the movie a low phenomenal grade on the Film Freaks meter. So, for those of you who have also seen Bad Boys, Ride or Die, and also the other films, let me know in the comments what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.